In this video, we're doing every bowl game in my picks. Now, I'm not experienced on a lot of these at all, but I did make picks for them because I'm ignorant. But, North Carolina A&T versus Alcorn State. I do have North Carolina A&T. Tulane versus Louisiana. I do have Louisiana. North Texas versus Utah State. This is an interesting one. This will be very close. One of the two best group of 5 teams, right behind UCF and UAB. And I think this will be extremely close. These teams are extremely good for their level of play. But I do think Utah State barely edges it out over North Texas. I'd say 38-35, Utah State. Georgia Southern versus Eastern Michigan. I picked Georgia Southern because they're having an outstanding year this year. And for about 2 or 3 quarters, I think they played well against Clemson, or well-ish. I do have them. Middle Tennessee versus Appalachian State. I heard Middle Tennessee came very close to winning the conference, although Appalachian State did win the Sun Belt. And I do have Appalachian State in that one. 1 minute here. My script just fell. UAB versus Northern Illinois. I do have UAB in this one. Their coach is probably going to the Power 5 next year. I do think they'll win this one. It'll be fairly close, but I got UAB by about 10. San Diego State versus Ohio. I got San Diego State. Marshall versus South Florida. This is another little bit an interesting one. South Florida's having a good year, kind of outshined by UCF, and so is Marshall. And a lot of people know them for the Marshall movie, We Are Marshall. But I do think USF, South Florida, will win this one, especially if Blake Barnett, the Alabama transfer, is healthy. I feel good they'll win this one. Florida International versus Toledo. I have Florida International. Western Michigan versus BYU. I do not get why people are hopping on this UCF bandwagon, because Western Michigan went undefeated a few years ago, 2016. Had a good coach and a good quarterback, Zach Terrell. Anyways, I do have Western Michigan in this one over BYU. And I think it'd be fairly close, but I got them by about 2 touchdowns. Memphis versus Wake Forest. I think Memphis wins about a touchdown game. I think Darrell Henderson will have a huge game. Houston versus Army. I do think Houston wins this one because of their incredible quarterback. I don't know if he's healthy for this game, but I think he is. And their monster defensive lineman, Ed Oliver. I do think they win this one, although Army is having a spectacular year. Buffalo versus Troy. I do have Troy. They're having a really good year, and Buffalo is too. But I do have Troy, probably because of my Alabama State bias. Hawaii versus Louisiana Tech. I got Hawaii. For no reason at all, because I don't watch either team. But because Roll Tide to a Tagovailoa. Oh, Lord. Boston College versus Boise State. Another interesting one. Boston College hasn't been the best this year. They've been pretty good, though. And Boise State has been pretty good. Both in the top 25, I do believe. I know Boise State is. I do think Boise State edges this one out, which is unlike me, uncharacteristically, because I do mostly pick Power 5 over Group of 5. But I do think Boise State will win this one. Minnesota versus UGA Tech. I do have Minnesota because I am a big fan of PJ Fleck and what he did at Western Michigan. And he's now at Minnesota, and I think he'll have a really good career at Minnesota. And I do think they beat Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech, triple option, they're not going to get anything done. They couldn't get it done against Georgia. Cal versus TCU. Haven't watched any team, but I am going with TCU because they did play well versus Ohio State and have come close to winning a lot of games. And Cal hasn't really been at the top yet. They haven't ascended to the top of the Pac-12 yet. Temple versus Duke. Haven't watched most of either team. I did watch Duke versus Clemson, and I did watch Temple versus UCF. But I do have Duke in this one. Power 5 over Group of 5. Wisconsin versus Miami. This is interesting. This is actually a New Year's 6 bowl last year. Think about that. Now a meaningless bowl game. It was the New Year's 6 bowl last year. Same teams, I do believe, I hope. Wisconsin versus Miami. I do have Miami. I think Mark Richt is a very up and down coach, but I think he will win this one. It depends. If they can keep Jonathan Taylor contained, Miami will win this game. But if they can't, Wisconsin could edge it out. Baylor versus Vandy. I haven't watched any team. I did watch a little bit of Vandy versus Notre Dame. And I am going with Vandy because they did play Notre Dame close. They're in the SEC, and they got a really good pro-style quarterback in Kyle Shermer. Son of Pat Shermer, New York Giants head coach. Purdue versus Auburn. Oh, that school. I do have Purdue in this one because of Rondell Moore and just those offense and I don't remember his name. I believe it was Jim Blau. That's not his name. I can tell already. But he's a fairly decent quarterback. I pray that Tyler Trent will make it to this game. He won the Disney Spirit Award. If you don't know, he's battling cancer and is a huge Purdue fan, and I hope he can make it through this one. You should really check out his story if you haven't heard it already. But I do think Purdue wins this one by about 1 or 2 touchdowns because of their Rondell Moore on the outside, the Blau, their quarterback, and a good running game. And I think their defense can make enough plays to beat Auburn. Although SEC bias, but Alabama bias. West Virginia versus Syracuse. I think this one will be a blowout, honestly. You've seen what Syracuse did when they played a top-tier opponent in Notre Dame. They couldn't get anything done. 39-3, that's probably Notre Dame's most impressive outing of the year. And I think West Virginia and Will Grier make enough plays to win this one by 20 or more. Iowa State versus Washington State. I do think this one will be a blowout. Gardner Minshew will throw on Iowa State. Trust me. Although I don't think Washington State will be able to contain. It's slipping my head. But that big, huge wide receiver Iowa State has, I feel like he'll play good pro ball one day. I don't think they can contain him, but I also don't think they contain Gardner Minshew, and I think Washington State is overall the better team. Florida versus Michigan, a New Year's 6 bowl. This one is a very tough bowl game. I think both of these teams had exponential potential. Didn't quite meet them, had to play tough opponents, and couldn't quite get over that hump. Although I do have Michigan in this one. 24-21 by a field goal. This one will be close in a very defensive contest. I'm sorry if I do this a lot. A lot of hand motions. South Carolina versus Virginia. Now, I haven't watched any just about of either team. But I do know South Carolina has a up and down defense. You can only get 3 quarters out of them. Maybe just 2. But Virginia doesn't have an explosive offense. I think their quarterback, with a little bit more experience, could be good. I think he's just like Terry Wilson, and he did cause them the Virginia Tech game, which I wanted them to win. Arkansas State versus Nevada. Haven't watched either team really, except Arkansas State versus Alabama, and I do think Arkansas State will pull this one out. They got a decent running back and a good quarterback. Cincinnati versus Virginia Tech. Ooh, this is a tough one, but I do think Virginia Tech pulls us out. Power 5 versus Group of 5, honestly. And I think Virginia Tech just has a better team. Stanford versus Pitt. Two teams who just about made it to their conference championships and were terrible. That's sad. Pitt actually did make it to the conference championship. But I do have Stanford in this one. If Bryce Love can go off. If Stanford gets enough blocks and Bryce Love is healthy, Stanford will win this one. Michigan State versus Oregon. I do have Oregon winning this one. I think Michigan State has been one of the biggest disappointments in football this year. Although they did beat Penn State, still a huge disappointment. Had tons of starters coming back. People predicted them making the playoffs and beating Ohio State, and those dreams faded quickly. I do have Oregon. I think Justin Herbert will get it done, and Oregon wins this one about 17 points. Missouri versus Oklahoma State. I do have Missouri in this one. I think Drew Lock will pass all over that defense, but I do think Oklahoma State's quarterback will have a lot of success versus Missouri's defense. Although I do see Missouri outgaining them, outscoring them in a very tight contest. Northwestern versus Utah. Two people who made it to the conference championship and failed. I do have Utah in this one because of their defense. I think their offense will get it done against Northwestern. NC State versus Texas A&M. I think this one won't be close. Although I was a fan of NC State earlier in the year when they were undefeated. They really did just go out and just be terrible. And Texas A&M is one of the most underrated teams in football right now. They're one of the closest teams to play Alabama other than Georgia. It was like a 22-point game, and they kept it close for a long time, or for a good amount of time. They brought Clemson, the number 2 team, to the wire, and they beat LSU in overtime. And I think they will win this one. Kyle Mond will have a huge game. Iowa versus Miss State. I do think Miss State pulls this one through because I think Nick Fitzgerald will have a big game. And Iowa hasn't had that great of the year. I think their tight end will get involved. But I do think Miss State pulls this one out, especially because of that defense. UCF versus LSU. I do see LSU winning this one in a blowout because of their stout defense. And I think Joe Burrow will get it done. I have LSU in that one. UCF's winning streak is coming to an end. Sorry if you hear background noises. Penn State versus Kentucky. Now, I'm not sure about this game. But, I do want Kentucky to win. SEC bias and, Kentucky. And I think Kentucky will win. I think they'll make enough plays to win. Washington versus Ohio State. This one's going to be a blowout. I don't know why they put this as a New Year's 6 game. I think Washington has a good defense. Not good enough. Dwayne Haskins will pass all over it. I'm not sure about that. But he will have a decent game. And I think Ohio State wins this one by about 21 points. Just over 20. Texas versus Georgia. Very interesting. This is a very important game for both teams. Look at Texas. If they win this game against the team that brought Alabama to the wire and the number 5 team, this could get them over that hump. This could bring Texas back. I don't know if you can bring them back at this point. It looks like they're back every year. But it really could. And Georgia, they don't want to go out on a losing record, especially losing that SEC championship and barely being on the brink of the playoffs. And this will give them something to boast their chests about other than taking Bama to the wire. I do think Georgia gets this one done by about a touchdown or so. I think this one is going to be in the 30s, maybe the 40s, but I'm going to say 30s. 31-38, Georgia. Alabama versus Oklahoma for the playoffs. Now, I think Alabama wins this game. I think it's very high scoring. I've already talked about this game before. And I think Alabama wins it. 77, OU 49. Clemson versus Notre Dame. I do think Clemson wins this one. 31-17. Sorry for the background noises. And that's my bowl predictions. Thank you. And I will be doing a live stream of my reaction to the Heisman announcement. I'll see you there.